Joining me now is Dr. Arvind Panagria, former Vice Chairman, NITI Aayog and Columbia University professor. Professor Panagria is joining me live. Thank you so much for your time. How do we distinguish between subsidies, which are seen as welfareism, from freebies? On one hand, the support to education, health, farms are good subsidies, but on the other hand, Professor Panagria, what is said is that free electricity is not because it distorts crop pattern, and not every farmer or every household needs free electricity.
It's a difficult one, Maria, because the distortions can come from what is seen as welfareism, as well as from what is not seen as welfareism. To some degree, of course, one person's welfareism is another person's freebie.
Freebie, that's right.
So it is difficult. So economists tend to, think in terms of efficiency effects. Subsidies that have very large distorting effects in terms of efficiency of the economy, those we generally try to discourage. If you wish, you can call them freebies. So clearly, for example, something like a fertilizer subsidy, electricity subsidy when it is given particularly to households that are well-to-do, would both be, in my view, kind of distorting subsidies which don't necessarily serve a social purpose. Distorting subsidies, we can generally, economists are okay when they're serving some sort of welfare redistribution objective.
Okay.
Now, when you think of subsidy, let's say electricity subsidy to all households, it's not quite clearly a kind of redistribution you would want to do. You would rather use the subsidy that is going well-to-do households to the poorer households, even if it happens to be not for electricity.
Okay, tell me, Professor Panagria, will it be a simplistic view to say that freebies are almost like bribes to win votes, as is being said by certain politicians? But the other argument can be that those living on the margins of society actually depend on these freebies. They need those freebies, and they need more so, particularly from the point of view of food security or social security.
Yeah, you see, so ultimately, look, in a democracy, it's difficult to eliminate the freebies. I think the debate is very good. I'm glad in that sense that the Chief Justice of India has triggered this debate, because that will help us probably, at least, on the margins, reduce some of the subsidies that are distortionary and that really don't serve the kind of purpose you have in mind, which transfers to they need them for what there's absolutely no doubt. In fact, they need more than what we currently are able to afford because of the fiscal constraints. And that, of course, makes all the more reason why, subsidies that are distortionary, that are actually going to the well-to-do, should in fact be reduced and therefore diverted to the poor. So that case certainly exists. But when it comes to elections, I think everybody is doing their sense, and we can argue about so these are okay, these are not okay. But in a democratic society,
yes,
that's
absolutely,
something that is there to stay.
Yes, and how do you look at this back and forth that is happening between the BJP and the Aam Aadmi Party over what really is loan waiver and loan being written off? What exactly is the difference between the two? Please explain for our viewers.
So the way I understand it is, when we say loan waivers, we are referring to, I suspect, that during elections or prior to elections, parties sort of offering to waive the loans. I think largely those are the loan waivers. That's what you're referring to. I think those are detrimental in a bigger way, which is that you are basically hurting those who are actually paying their uh, loans. So when you waive the loan, those who were actually already paying their loans feel that, goodness, why were we paying them? And so in some degree, it's sort of end up punishing those who live within their means. When they borrow, they try to pay them. Whereas those who are delinquents who choose not to pay are the ones who benefit from the waiver. Whereas loan write-offs can have many different forms, and commonly remember that the banks have to write off loans when effectively a business to which they gave the money to which the credit was given fails. If that business fails in the end, you have no choice. I mean, that's the risk of lending money. And in every system, every economy, a small part of the loans does go bad, and they have to be then written off. So if that is how the write-off of loans is interpreted, then that's perfectly good expenditure of doing this. I think that's a cost of doing business for the banks or for lenders in general. So if I can make that distinction, then clearly the loan waivers are a far worse thing to do. And in any case, loan write-offs in the way I have described them are absolutely legitimate instrument of policy. I mean, not even policy, but it's just something that, to keep any system of intermediate life alive, you wouldn't.
My last question to you, Professor Panagria. One view is, and this is of course for those who are pro-freebies, they say that why punish the poor when crores are in fact waived off by writing off the loans of the super rich. The rich, in fact, rip off also the banking system is being argued upon. And just look at one example that is being given is of custom duty. So why not look at the most vulnerable differently from those who belong to the rich category?
No, absolutely. I mean, no argument about that, Maria. I mean, we got to do that. We tend to do that, but one is being driven by the social welfareism, right? I mean, the distributions or whatever expenditures we do on the poor and the vulnerable, those are being driven precisely by the social consensus that the society, as it grows and becomes richer, it has got to take care of these sections of society, and so those transfers expenditures are all very well justified. Whereas these other ones actually get driven by lobbying, by corruption and whatnot. And so they really become a function of the governance, how the government of the day is administering its laws, administering its programs and all. And governments that, want to lobby for accepting corruption and even indulging in corruption, they will create these problems. They would then squander the funds, and the redistribution will happen to the non-deserving. I mean, custom duty, for example, is a good, to me actually as an economist, is a good example. What you're doing here, you basically are taking it out of the pocket of the consumer and giving it to the producer, right? Think of automobile. Why should you have to pay? Why should you, that is, as a buyer of an automobile, have to pay 1.5 times the price that I pay for the exactly same automobile here in the United States? Because there is a 100% custom duty on these cars, so therefore it allows the domestic manufacturers to jack up the price, and that to me is a freebie, actually, the producer being given at the expense of the consumer.
Professor Panagria, always a pleasure to speak to you. Really appreciate your time. Thank you so much.